Imagine you're a sailor in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. The year is 1872. You spot a ship drifting silently in the water. No flags of distress, no smoke, no sound. You pull alongside and call out. Nothing. You board the vessel. The sails are partially set. The cargo is untouched. There's food on the table, still warm. Clothes hanging to dry. A cat sitting quietly below deck. But the crew? Gone. Every single one of them vanished without a trace. This is not a ghost story. This is the true mystery of the Mary Celeste. And more than 150 years later, no one has ever fully explained what happened. The Mary Celeste was a brigantine, a two-masted sailing vessel built in 1861 in Spencer's Island, Nova Scotia, Canada. She was originally christened the Amazon, but after a string of bad luck, ownership changed hands multiple times, and by 1869, she had been renamed the Mary Celeste. She wasn't a legendary ship. She wasn't famous. She was a working vessel, solid, reliable, built for transporting cargo across the Atlantic. But on the 5th of November, 1872, she left New York Harbor, carrying something far more valuable than cargo: 10 souls. Captain Benjamin Spooner Briggs was 37 years old, experienced, deeply religious, and well-respected. He had made many ocean crossings before. This was not a man who panicked easily. Joining him on board were 7 experienced crew members, including the first mate, Albert Richardson. And critically, Captain Briggs brought his wife, Sarah, and their 2-year-old daughter, Sophia Matilda. This detail matters. A man does not bring his wife and infant daughter on a voyage he considers dangerous. The ship's cargo was 1,701 barrels of denatured industrial alcohol, ethanol, destined for a wine merchant in Genoa, Italy. The total value of the cargo was around $35,000, nearly $1 million in today's money. The Mary Celeste set sail from New York on November 5, 1872. The weather was harsh. They encountered strong headwinds almost immediately. The ship struggled through storms for the first week, but by all accounts, she was holding together. Now we jump forward 4 weeks. On December 4th, 1872, some accounts say December 5th, the British brigantine Dei Gratia was sailing from New York to Gibraltar. She was captained by David Morehouse, who was actually a personal friend of Captain Briggs. They had dined together just days before both ships departed New York. Around 2 in the afternoon, the crew of the Dei Gratia spotted a vessel approximately 6 miles away. Something was wrong. The ship was moving erratically, yawing, as sailors say, swinging from side to side. She was clearly not under proper control. First Mate Oliver DeVoe and 2 other sailors rowed over in a small boat to investigate. What they found would haunt them for the rest of their lives. The ship was in relatively good condition. She was wet below deck, and some sails were torn, but she was seaworthy. There was no fire, no flooding, no sign of violence. But the crew was gone. The lifeboat, a small yawl, was missing from the main hatch. The ship's navigation instruments were gone. The ship's register was missing, and crucially, the chronometer and sextant were absent, suggesting the crew may have left in a hurry, taking the tools they'd need to navigate if they abandoned ship. Now here's where it gets strange. The cargo hold contained 1,701 barrels of alcohol. 9 of those barrels were found empty, but the rest were intact, untouched. The cargo had not been stolen. Piracy seemed unlikely. In the captain's cabin, there were personal belongings: Sarah Briggs' jewelry, money, even Captain Briggs' sword. These were things people simply do not leave behind. The ship's log, the written record of the voyage, was found. The last entry was dated November 24th, 1872, placing the ship at a specific location, about 100 miles west of the Azores Islands. When the Dei Gratia found her, she had traveled approximately 400 miles further east from that last recorded position, under sail, without a crew. There was food in the galley, water in the barrels. The ship was well supplied. There was no reason, none at all, for the crew to abandon her. The Dei Gratia crew sailed the Mary Celeste to Gibraltar, where a formal inquiry began in December of 1872. The British Admiralty's investigator, Solly Flood, was suspicious. He was very suspicious, almost aggressively so. He initially suspected the Dei Gratia's own crew of foul play, theorizing perhaps a drunken brawl, a mutiny, even murder. He looked for traces of blood and believed he found it on the deck and on Captain Brigg's sword. But forensic analysis later showed the blood was not blood at all. It was likely rust or a stain from organic material. No evidence of crime was ever established. The crew of the Dei Gratia was eventually awarded salvage money, though far less than they deserved, because the cloud of suspicion never fully lifted. The fate of the 10 souls aboard the Mary Celeste was officially declared unknown. The most widely accepted theory involves alcohol fumes. 9 barrels had leaked, likely filling the cargo hold with invisible vapor. Fearing an explosion, the captain may have ordered everyone into the lifeboat, tethering it to the ship to wait. A sudden wave could have snapped that rope, and the crew, stranded in a small open boat on the open Atlantic, were never seen again. A waterspout, a tornado at sea, may have panicked the crew into abandoning ship, but the Mary Celeste showed little damage, which makes this harder to believe. A seaquake is another possibility. The Azores region was seismically active. Violent underwater shaking with no visible cause could have convinced the crew their ship was breaking apart. Piracy and mutiny have both been largely ruled out. No violence, no stolen cargo, no motive. Finally, and this matters, much of the mythology around the Mary Celeste comes from a fictional short story written by Arthur Conan Doyle in 1884. The half-eaten meals, the warm coffee, none of that appears in actual witness accounts. Doyle's story was so convincing that fiction became fact in the public mind. The alcohol fumes theory explains the most, but the truth? Still unknown. The most likely explanation for the Mary Celeste, as unglamorous as it might sound, is a combination of leaking alcohol fumes, a panicked captain making a rational but ultimately fatal decision, and the unforgiving cruelty of the open ocean swallowing a small lifeboat whole. But we don't know. We cannot know. And that uncertainty is exactly what makes the Mary Celeste more than just a historical footnote. It is a mirror, reflecting our deepest anxieties about the unknown, about the sea, and about the fragile thread that connects us to the living world. 10 people boarded that ship. None of them were ever found. And somewhere at the bottom of the Atlantic, or perhaps nowhere at all, the truth still waits.